Welcome to Helping Organizations Thrive. Today I have Alon Zaibert. It's a real pleasure to have you on today, Alon. Welcome, Alon.
Thank you very much for having me, sir.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you on. I'm just going to let our audience and our listeners right now to know a little bit about you, and then we'll dive into some good conversation. So you're known as the master of emotional relevance. Which we're going to explore about that. I'm very interested by that. You're a business consultant and a people connoisseur, and you are also a sort of public speaker as well. So you're very comfortable with this live situation, which is brilliant. That's what I like. And you've got a lovely. You can see this if you're watching on the podcast. Listen on the podcast. Do have a look at the video. You can see a lovely backdrop behind Alon. It's fantastic. So I always ask my guests on the show as they come on. What do they love? What do you love about what you do?
I love the one thing that really, really, really gets me, the passion, the true passion, is making people feel, see, realize when I get people to feel.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
You know what? Let me show you what I mean by that. Let's say I'm trying to sell you something, or we're trying to develop business development. You don't know me. We haven't spoken before. We're just developing the relationship. And actually, let's take it to today. You and I, this is the first time we're actually speaking. You don't know me really. You read some things about me. I read some things about you. Let's go to what I call the trust meter, 1 to 10. Right, I'm trying to sell you something or build business development, build business relationship with you. 1 to 10, how much do you trust me right now?
I'd say I'll put a 7 on that.
Wow.
Yeah.
7 is very high to start with, but I'll roll with it.
Okay.
Now let me ask you. May I ask you a personal question, Julian?
Of course you can. Yeah, go for it.
You have kids?
I've got 4.
4 kids?
No hair. It's all gone.
Boys, girls?
All girls.
Oh, come on. All girls?
All girls.
How old is the youngest?
12.
Wow. Any sports with the kids? I mean, any of the girls is into any sports?
Triathlon.
Really? Which one of them?
Well, my 3rd youngest and my youngest now as well.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Which one of the events are they most, they like the most? The running, the bikes, the swimming?
I'd say my 3rd one, not my youngest, my 3rd youngest would be running. She loves running.
Now she's passionate about it, like she practices, or you need to push her?
Yeah, she practices. Yeah, definitely.
So I have a 14-year-old daughter who plays volleyball.
Right.
In the last 8 months or so, she's been practicing. Oh my God, by herself. And I always told my kids when they were little, music and sports, whatever you want. I'll go do other jobs. I'll drive Uber at night if I need to, but so yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, just the last 2 sentences when I reciprocated with my story and I got you to think about your daughter. Did you feel it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, because it's a personal thing to me. Yeah, definitely.
Well, so see, I'm getting the chills right now because let's think about what happened here for a second. First of all, under my methodology of emotional relevance, there are 3 pillars.
Yeah.
Right? Stand out, make an impact, and get personal. And in a way, what I did now was all 3, kind of touched all 3, right? I stood out by asking you something personal, which usually when you speak in business world or corporate world, you're not supposed to get personal. And this is going to be one of my first tips to leaders today, right? Okay. Don't be afraid to be personal because this is us as human. We'll get to that in a second. I also hopefully made an impact on you. See, what happens is emotional relevance is based on neuroscience, emotional intelligence, and psychology. Mm-hmm. And what happens is when we go through an emotional experience, Julian, we remember. It's engraved in our mind. If I ask you, where were you when the Twin Towers got hit? I guarantee you'll remember.
Absolutely, yeah.
And when I ask you that, I trigger you to relive that emotion,
Okay.
which embeds it even further. But if I ask you what you had for breakfast 3 days ago, you probably have no idea, right? So what I did is I took you through a personal, emotional experience. It doesn't have to be anything tragic like the Twin Towers, right?
No, sure.
Now, here is the amazing thing. First of all, you felt it, which is amazing because you're sitting in one side of the world, I'm sitting in another side of the world, but we felt something. And when I noticed that you felt it, this is for me answering your question of what it is that I love. Now, when you translate it to business relationship, imagine we started a business relationship and I asked you the same thing. Now, let's say you're interested in my product. There's a follow-up and we speak in another week and a half, right? Yeah. You bet your ass that in a week and a half, when I come back to the call, I am prepared with something about your 12-year-old daughter, my 14-year-old daughter, that will trigger that again, right? That emotional anchor that I placed when we first talked. So it gets us, the trust level now should be at around 8 or 9 from that 7. It's hard to get higher than that from a 7, but usually you start with a 2 or 3 when you don't know the people.
Yeah.
Right. So this is what I love the most when I get, when it's amazing, because when people feel, right now you got me all excited, because when people feel, Julian, they get it.
Well, no, you're right. I mean, it's that emotion, isn't it? And that's how we connect, is emotionally, not on a transactional. It's a relationship. It is an emotional thing. Now, how just on that, the great example, and I really liked it, and I felt it as well, which is really important, is how do we keep that in a way that is not done in a way with a purpose of selling or getting what I want, or whatever, however you determine it, but genuinely being authentic? Because that to me is the difference of, I used to be in sales myself, been on sales calls, and you work on ways of engaging people, building trust, rapport, and everything else. But actually, almost the end game is just to get a sale, and people feel that as much as anything else. So how do you make that connection and approach in a context of an organization be personable, but it's really authentic and genuine as well?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? That's the $1 million question, and I'll even make it more complicated, and ask you a question related to that same concept. When you volunteer, or when you ask to help somebody or donate some money, there was some research about, does it make you feel good, right, for doing it? And then you talk to somebody about it and you say, oh yeah, I donated this money because it makes you feel good. Or do you genuinely do it in order to help the others? The bottom line is, if both sides win, if both sides benefit from it, then you know what? I will let it slide. However, what I do primarily, the consulting that I do and the help, I don't try to teach people how to sell, right? There's so many selling methodologies out there, training, and I've gone through at least 4 or 5 in my career. I'm sure you have gone through a few, and they all talk about, you got to be genuine. Don't compliment people just for the sake of compliment. Listen, people are not stupid. People will see through it, right? The other thing is, of course, if you believe in what you're selling. If you're just there for the commission, then good luck. I mean, fine, but you'll find yourself, selling mugs, soon. If you're selling, my primary customer, if you may, is by definition somebody that sells something that is sophisticated, something that has a product and a service, and something that requires long-term relationship, and something that requires or has a lot of potential for cross-selling and continuous selling. So it's not just net new sales of 3-week sales cycle and I'm done.
Sure.
Yeah.
So how do you then translate that into a leader in an organization and who wants to, I guess, somehow inspire their teams or get their teams into a place of, I suppose, navigating through difficult times. How would you use this emotional relevance, this which is really quite powerful stuff? You just demonstrated it in that context with the leader. How would they use it?
Yeah. Well, one of my customers came to me with one of the biggest challenges, especially in the virtual world, in the online world now, is how do you overcome the fact that you cannot do small talks in the hallway anymore? How do you overcome all these things, the physical world? But what they wanted to focus on is their cross-divisional relationship within internally, not with their customers, but internally, internal customers. And one of the first things I did, Julian, when one of the first sessions I did with them online, there were about 12 managers. And I took two of them and I said, you guys been working together for a while. Yeah, we've been working together for about 1.5 years. Okay. Tell me two things about your colleague, about her, all right, that are not work related. Something personal about her. Mm-hmm. And it took them about 4 seconds and they said, oh, she loves coffee. And I, paused for a second. And I said to them, are you kidding me? Really? You've worked with her for 1.5 years, and this is the most personal thing you know about her? That she loves coffee? And so what I'm getting to, Julian, is, look, our innate needs as humans, it's a need, not a want, is to be socially connected, right? Yeah. To feel hugged, to feel connected, to feel related, right? Obviously, the big gap is in the corporate world. We are taught, we are programmed, we have been programmed for years to not make friends at the workplace, not share emotions. God forbid, hug somebody at the workplace. So there's a conflict with our needs and what we're being told not to do. In an interesting way, Julian, today, the pandemic that got us to be online got us to be more intimate. You're now in my house, basically, in my workplace. Yeah. I'm looking at your house. By default, we are more intimate. So use that, leaders, use that, and ask. Not only ask your teams, but have them ask each other. Okay, I'm gonna do a little spoiler. I have a blog. I don't know if you got a chance to read my blog. It's called 2 Weeks Notice, a touch of emotional relevance every couple of weeks. And tomorrow there's one coming out. And the title for the one tomorrow, for those of you who are listening live, it's a bit of a spoiler, but probably it's going to come out the podcast after. So the title for tomorrow is No, Really, How Are You? We've been programmed to start a call. How are you? Good. How are you? Good. And we just move on.
Yes, absolutely. Right?
No, really.
We have that stock answer, don't we? Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah. And it's almost like it's like a prelude to moving on, isn't it? And it's
exactly.
Nobody's really interested in each other because they're just like, it's what you say. It's almost like at a start of conversation. How are you, Alan? Yeah, right. Okay, let's get on.
But hang on a second, Julian, because it's okay, because it's a greeting. It's okay. I don't expect you. But what I'm telling leaders these days is, let's say we had a team meeting with 10 people, and you, every meeting, select one of your team members and say, hey, could you stick around for a second after the meeting is done? Now you're staying one-on-one with them. Okay? Then here's a little technique. I do sometimes sessions about the feeling of togetherness in the online world, in the virtual world. Believe it or not, it's possible. Like I made you feel, it's possible. Here's a little trick, something little that you can use that helps a lot. And it's not just a one-on-one. You can do it with larger teams, but you stay one-on-one with them. And then you say to them, hang on a second, let me lock that session so nobody can interrupt us. On Zoom, you can actually lock the session so nobody can interrupt. Just by saying that, you made them feel special. You made a little environment feel a little special. Just by saying that, already you are probing some emotional reaction. And then you say to them, hey, how are you? And their initial reaction is going to be, I'm good. Yeah. Because we're programmed to just respond.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you pause for a second and say, no, really, how are you? Just like how I said it right now, Julian, your tendency is to now go more personal because you understand my meaning is a little bit more personal. Yesterday, I had a call with a colleague, a friend, and I said, hey, how are you? How you doing? And he started telling me about work, and I stopped him after a minute. I said, no, my friend, I'm not going to mention names, but I said, my friend, could you please tell me, how are you? How's your daughter? How's your wife? How is life? He just moved to from New York to Miami. It doesn't matter. How are you? So he took a deep breath. You know what? I'm glad you asked. And usually that's the emotional thing. So this is a great little tip for leaders these days, right? Take advantage of this scenario, of the fact that we're supposedly apart from one another, and get more genuine, get more personal. Remember, I told you the third pillar of emotional relevance is get personal, which is the most challenging one because people, like I said, Julian, I read a research last week. Apparently the US, and I am in the US, is one of the most touch-phobic societies in the world.
Really?
Yes, sir. Now, the impact of it on the culture, rates of depression, suicide rates, violence in the society, okay? But it gets us to behave in a certain way, not just personal space, but really how, the guidelines. But again, it goes against our willingness. And so once you probe that, people will, wow, thank you for asking. And then they will open up and you can reciprocate like I just did with you, with my daughter.
I was going to say that to me is, as a leader, if you're asking somebody how are they and they get personal, to create that, I guess, or even lead by a safe environment is then to create, almost share yourself and to lead by example, isn't it? Because obviously if you're just asking just to get personal in a sense of creating a personal connection, but you've already led it by said, I'm sharing this, I'm sharing that, actually starts to create a more psychologically safe environment. The leaders stepping out here, therefore I feel comfortable to be sharing. Because it's, I guess, in some ways as a leader, we set the tempo, don't we, in terms of how personal we get or not.
So you touched an amazing thing, and I'll tell you a couple of things. One, if you lead the way with sharing, I used to do my weekly, when I managed sales teams, I used to do a weekly call, and at the end of each call, at the end of each call, each will go around and each one will have to share something personal that is not work related.
Really?
Yeah, everyone. It used to take 10 to 15 minutes, but everyone would share. And I got to tell you, the impact of it was amazing. The other thing, that's if you're leading it. The other thing, though, is when I asked you about your daughter, I was fishing also for something that I can reciprocate to close that loop, to make that connection.
Sure.
It's proven scientifically and psychologically that if I don't reciprocate and share something, right, then you'll still get emotional, but you won't have that feeling, that trust level with me that I'm looking for. Okay, so before I speak to anybody with it, when it's sales related, and this could be another, this is something that I sometimes take for granted, but still apparently people don't do that. Find out about the person you're going to talk to. Go to their LinkedIn, go to their Facebook, find out where they went to school, what's their hobbies, their family, what they love, what they don't love. So find out. There's so much online today that you can find out, so you know where to fish. Now, again, going back to your question earlier about, is it genuine? Is it just to get the sale done? It's both. If you can do both and the other side benefits from it because you believe in what you're selling, great. Okay, so this is, yes, it's techniques, it's tricks, whatever. But if you genuine, one of my blogs I wrote about something along those lines, and I said, what's the worst thing that could happen? That you'll make a new friend. So what?
Yes. No, you're right. And it's building that relationship. And I think we forget that we go into this business world or corporate world or any type of sort of more official professional section of our lives. And we forget, I don't know why, that we're people, we're sociable, we like talking about each other, we like talking about ourselves. We're actually genuinely mostly interested in each other. That's how it tends to be. People quite like stories about what they're doing the weekend, and then there's elements of styles and everything else, clearly. Going back to the whole the selling bit and people feeling that, I know I was speaking to somebody how, and again, there's some sort of science behind this, where if I'm trying to just convince you about my coaching program, all I'm interested in is getting a sale. Yeah. If that's my purpose, you will ultimately, your subconscious will feel that. But if I go and take that purpose in that conversation higher and go, I want to help Alon be more transformational, break some mindsets, as in take a bigger purpose, you'll feel that, and not the money piece or the sort of transactional piece. And I guess in some ways bringing in that personal side, which I really agree with you, and building that rapport and getting engaging in genuine conversation. But if your purpose is higher, that'll also be felt. And that's where you end up with that real authenticness of, this guy wants to help me, and rather than trying to sell me his coaching program, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
And you touched the essence of what I do, which is the feeling, right? On my website, I wrote, you know how sometimes you meet somebody and you just feel some energy connection with them? This is where I play, right? This is my, this is where my playing ground. This element of feeling, right? Because we are programmed to remember feelings and emotions for a long time. Now, mind you, it's not easy, because you got to do these cycles of emotional anchoring and triggering those emotions again and again and again. And you got to take notes, and you got to remember and bring it back, and et cetera, et cetera. But it works.
Totally.
It works. And you just said it yourself. We feel it. I don't need you to be able to explain it. That's okay. I'll just work with you on how to do it. Right?
Yeah.
Because we've been programmed for years not to play in that field. So fine, you tippy-toe around it at first, and I have been doing it for a while, so I get away with a lot of things that people at first, but quietly, and I've done a survey with quite a few people that, you know, if there are people in the room and I ask somebody something a little personal, they feel a little awkward, and they will answer because it's polite to answer, but they felt a little awkward. But then when you ask them separately after the meeting, all of them are 100% said, oh, I actually like that question, and I actually love the fact that you showed interest in it personally. No, but there are rules in the boardroom, right? You're not supposed to do this. Fine. So I'm just taking all those guidelines and rules and the corporate dance, if you may.
Well, I mean, Alon, how did you sort of, I suppose, get into, obviously you've been living this yourself, obviously personally, but how did you sort of start to hone this into something that you do and obviously learn more about and sort of focus a bit more on it? How did that happen?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the first time that I started thinking about it was a few years ago. I was working for a technology company based in Indiana. And I was running the sales team and the account management team. And I went for a meeting with my boss about 3 months after I started working there. My boss came with me for the first time, and we were in a boardroom with about 12 people, executives. And I was about 2-hour session, and I did my thing, and we came out of there, and my boss looked at me and he said, look, I was there with you in the room. I felt something. I don't know how you did it. I don't care how you did it. Keep doing it. And ever since, I bothered myself, what is that thing?
Yeah.
And then I started to be more open, because my friends, my colleagues, you know, I would go to a coffee shop or restaurant and interact with people. I love interacting with people, or whether it was business or not business. Alon, how did you do that? How did you make this other person react like that? How did you get away with this, right? So it's always, since then, it's been super interesting for me to research what is that. And then I started writing my blog about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. I started writing my blog, and I said, here's a scenario. My blog is 3 to 5 short minute read. It's a nice story. It's not super intense psychologically, but I started getting people to react to my blog and say, yeah, that's right. So slowly, and then about less than a year ago, I want to say, I met with a customer in the US, and we were at Starbucks, and I went to get her coffee. She was waiting on the side, and I went to get her coffee, and I started doing my thing with the guy around, behind the counter, and another lady behind me. Within about 27 seconds, we were all laughing and sharing stories about each other, and etc. And I brought the coffee back to the table, and I see my customer. She was looking like this, smiling. And she said, you know what you are? I said, no. She goes, you're a people connoisseur. Right?
Interesting.
So this is where I added it to my title. So it started, I would say roughly 7 years ago. When I started researching and looking into it. I was lucky in my last job when I managed a sales team, my last corporate job, I was able to try some of these things, right? Test them and see what works, what doesn't work, tweak it. Recently, if I may throw out there, I actually launched a 10-week program for the virtual world. I call it the power of presence without being present. So everything we talked about, right, all these elements in the virtual world, right? Emotional relevance in the virtual world for salespeople, etc. So roughly 7 years ago, I started.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for asking, by the way. I don't
well,
think.
No, and it's interesting because 7 years ago, when your boss obviously said, something of that, whatever that was at the time, were you intentional before then, or that made you go, okay, what is this or what is that, and then start to unpick it and then start to become intentional with it? Because obviously, there's people. We all meet people in certain ways who have a natural gravitational to something, and then they realize that has a great impact, and then they hone it, and then they amplify it by being more intentional with it. I guess, was that the case with you as well?
Yeah. Again, thank you for asking. This is where it gets personal, and I love it. I wasn't as intentional. But I will tell you something that only about 3 months ago, I was able to say it out loud because something that happened. I came out of this meeting with my boss that I mentioned, 12 people, and it happened to me before with other meetings, where I felt as if there was another me hovering around the room and feeding me with data on each one, what their needs are, their personal needs, right? What is the attention level they need? And I was embarrassed to share it because I'm thinking, if I'm sharing something like that, people are going to think I'm weirdo, right? So no, I wasn't seeing another me. It just felt that I have like a super ability to go around the room without, and so it was all within me. 3 months ago, on a online session that I did, somebody asked me, "Do you have ADHD?" And I said, somebody wrote to me, "Do you have ADHD?" I said, "Yeah, I probably do. Yeah, never tested officially, but I probably do. My son has it. It was tested, and etc. Most likely, I have it." And then they shared with me, apparently there is an element of people who have ADHD that have shared that experience on different elements, like superpowers of being able to see other things clear. Call it more sensitive antennas or whatever you want to call it. So that's how it kind of evolved for me. And when I started researching and finding out, emotional intelligence is, in the last 3 years, is booming with research and a lot of information and data, which helped me put things in perspective and tweak it and create, I have the 3 pillars that I mentioned, create my recipe for leaders and sales, because not everybody has that ability. And I will it's okay. Not everybody has it. So I'm creating cheat sheets, recipes and little things that help.
And with that, I mean, you've got this sense of where you've got potentially a higher way of antennae or picking things up or processing things, whatever you want to call it. How do you help people to obviously not be you, because you're you and that's fine, but to turn their own antennae on? They may not have as many or what have, it doesn't matter, but it just almost, how do they get to that place where they start picking up more information about people and to help process? Because in that context where you felt in that room you were moving around as another person was sort of feeding you, or you were feeding yourself, that gave you insights, that gave you that sort of impact. Is there anything you could share that would help anybody who's listening to this right now?
Yeah, so it takes practice. It does take practice, and it starts with little things like how we started this conversation, right? Don't be afraid for you to share. When you share real, genuine information about yourself, and you'll see magic, right? Julian, I know you have 3 girls. I know the youngest is 12. I know you have 4 girls. The 2 young ones love triathlon, and the youngest one loves running the most. That was just one simple little question. Okay. Now, what I teach is, okay, you better take notes. If you're using a CRM, use that in a CRM. Now, how do you go about utilizing that next time you talk? Okay. Hopefully you learn over time to feel as well. So one of the things that I work with people, obviously, is to listen, but listen with your emotional ears, if you may.
Yeah.
Right? Stop for a second. Julian, really, how are you? See, even that awkwardness for a second got you. I can guarantee you what was going on in your mind. You were going to answer. You wanted to answer, right? Instead of, hey, how you doing today? Good, excellent, me too. Let's go.
Yes.
Right? It's like a performance, right? It's like a speaking engagement, which I love doing as well, right? They teach you to pause for a second, count to 4.
But also, what you did there as well, you obviously used I could feel your feeling. You were pausing. You looked at me as much as we can in the virtual sense, but you leant forward. You leant forward into the screen, which created a more of a physical body language as well, which is very important, isn't it? And it's that you actually leant in and went, well, how are you? Leant in, and that's.
You want me to teach you another quick trick?
Go on then.
I'll show you something cute. Now, this is for impacting others. There's so many little things in the online virtual world. Are you ready? Hey, Julian, how are you? Go ahead, turn to me. Go ahead. Look at me now on the video.
All right, okay. Oh, I'm that way. Yeah.
The other way. There you go.
Yeah.
Hey, Julian, how's your day today?
That's been good, thank you.
Now, the people who are watching this right now, they're seeing us being more intimate, right? Now, yeah, it's weird, right? It's weird for a while, but even those little things, for the sake of the meeting, to get that feeling, right? Yeah. Little things like that. By the way, I can guarantee you, I don't know how many people we have live right now watching, but I can guarantee you that when we did that, people chuckled. Which means we took them through a small little emotional experience.
Yes.
Right? They're going to talk about this, hopefully, what we did. They're going to try it probably in their next meeting and figure it out and see the impact of that team. That's it. We created a ripple effect of emotional experience.
Brilliant. I love it. That's brilliant. That's amazing. And obviously in that virtual world, even more so, we need to feel it and to engage with people. As you say, you're all about the hugging. You like to feel, and I'm sure you do. Have done lots of hugging up until the COVID-19 has hit.
Yeah, but you're right. I love hugging. I'm a big fan of hugging. There's a whole science around it. But there's also virtual hugging, and because it translates to the feeling. It just translates to the feeling of feeling safe, feeling secure, feeling wanted, right? So those little things, me asking you, really, tell me, how are you really? That's a hug. That touches the same hormones, right? That you feel good about yourself when you get hugged. It's the same thing, the same impact. So I'm still hugging, not physically as much, but I'm still hugging.
Fantastic. We got a response. I'll show you it from Andrew. You can see that on the screen. So there we go.
It works. I'm telling you, it works.
Works. Excellent. That's brilliant. Well, it's been a delight to get to know you, Alon. I always wonderfully love these conversations with people that I've never met in my life, and yet I've got to know you really well. And your story of how you do your emotional relevance is fantastic and really impactful. And I love it. You just almost did a little show and tell right there. You weren't just talking about it, we were doing it, and that's brilliant. And I appreciate your time. And so just how can people get in touch with you and connect with you, and if you want to know more about what you've just been talking about on this show?
Sure. AlonZaibert.com is my website. So you can find there whatever you want, my email, sign up to my blog. So yeah, AlonZaibert.com is probably the best way to reach out.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for coming on, Alon. So appreciated it.
Julian, thank you so very much. It's been a pleasure. This whole thing has been one big hug for me, and I mean it wholeheartedly. Yeah. And good luck with the 4 girls.
Yes. Oh, no, I know. I need it. No, it's great. Thank you very much.